Hello everyone, Miles here, and I want to thank you for joining me in this third video in our three-part video series on the evolution of response. And first I want to thank all of those who've watched the first two videos, downloaded the free gift, and put your comments and questions in the comment box. We've had really great feedback and great response from everybody, and it's been a really rich kind of learning experience for me, as I hope it was for you. In this third video, we're going to be looking at some more great content, but before we go forward, I want to first invite you to receive your free gift. Just click the video below, and I'll send straight to your inbox another reference guide. This one's going to be called the Evolution of Response Fulcrum Chart, and it's another chart with each of the 6 stages and the top practices, some of the top practices for each stage to help fulcrum you or leverage you up to the next stage. So just click below and we'll send that right to your inbox. Now remember, the evolution of response is about really fundamentally changing our perspective and even evolving our perspective and how we relate to stress and conflict in our life. And as we move through these evolutionary stages, or these developmental stages, it really kind of starts to begin to create a certain competencies for more awareness, more connection, and more creativity in the face of stress and conflict in life. And this is something that we take directly out of our Aikido practice. We translate the principles into this kind of developmental scale, which then again translates them right into your own life. So the evolution response is a teaching model and a collection of practices that I've been teaching around the world for the past 20 years. In Japan and Burma and in New Zealand, in Europe, United States, and Israel, and the West Bank with the Palestinians. And it doesn't matter who you are, this kind of natural blueprint is there, and people begin to evolve from whatever level they're at to whatever level they're going. Viktor Frankl has a beautiful quote where he says, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose. And in our choice is our freedom to greater growth and development." That's exactly what the evolution of response is about, is actually creating the power to choose, creating a space between stimulus and response, especially in conflict or highly stressful situations, and having a power and choice that will actually lead us forward to greater growth and development and understanding complexity and care in the face of conflict and stress. And one of the most beautiful kind of, as a teacher, we work with students on a daily basis, or maybe we see them once a year, or maybe we only see them once and we never see them again for many years or even the rest of our life. But we work with people as they're going through their own developmental process, and there's many challenges on the path for anybody that's going through some type of internal development. And along with those challenges, there's the overcoming of the challenge and actually some small wins that people go through in their life. And I just want to share with you one of the wins that one of my students actually came to me with one day a few years ago after he had been working with these stages of the evolution of response. And he's a Palestinian student of mine that I was working with in the West Bank. And we've been working together for about 9 years. And when he started, he was rather young and still kind of hot-headed. And in the training, even in the Aikido class, his anger would get triggered pretty quick. And he had a lot of pride, and he was just would easily get set off. And but he really loved Aikido, and he stuck with it. And he actually took the principles of Aikido to heart and really worked with them. Well, this guy, I won't use his name, let's just call him Joe, for example. Joe, he actually lives in the West Bank, but he would travel into Israel every day to work, because that's where his job was. And as he traveled into Israel, he would have to go through the checkpoint, and it can be rather tense situations going through the checkpoint, because you're going through a fence that's kind of guarded, and you have to pass through, and you have to have your permit and to get through. And there's from time to time, you can imagine there's a lot of tension that can arise at the checkpoint. And he used to have quite a time going through there. But after practicing Aikido and working with these levels of the evolutionary response, especially the choice maker and centered awareness response, something started to change in him. He was easily triggered early on, especially in those situations. But he came to me one day and he says, as I go through these checkpoints, I used to really kind of get confrontational with the guys that were leading me through. But something's happened, and I actually start working on my center, and I start paying attention to this wave of fear and anger that comes up, and I'm able to contain it greater, and now I'm actually able to go through the whole process of the checkpoint in the morning going out and in the evening coming back, and I'm able to kind of contain my center. And it gives me a capacity to stay centered where I'm in that place of choice. So what he was basically saying was something that Viktor Frankl discovered, in the middle of the Holocaust, 60 years ago, was that between stimulus and response, there was a space of choice. And he was nurturing, and for him at that point, it was a subtle thing, but it was a huge thing, that it became more important for him at that point to stay in that place of choice. That's where he found his power, rather than become reactive in a situation that's easily to become reactive. So this is just to show you that how the evolutionary response can be used in any situation. And you can imagine if it's used in a situation like that, where there's just really, that's just what it is. That's the situation that this guy, Joe, is going through on a daily basis. Or if you apply it to your life, which is probably a much simpler situation. We think we have a lot of stress and conflict in our life. If we compare to some people and some places around the world right now, it's unimaginable what people are going through, and even not too far from here. It's just you can't imagine what it's like. So, but these practices work, and that's why I hope that you'll actually take it and apply it to your life. So as I said before, we got some really great responses and interaction in the past 2 videos down in the comments section, and there were some pertinent and really great questions that came up, and I just want to address one of the questions here. So one of the questions that came up was, how can I assess myself in the scale of the evolution response, and how can I trust that my assessment is honest? Well, first I'd like to say that self-assessment is kind of a natural thing that we're doing all the time, but it is very difficult to assess ourselves. A self-assessment is something that is usually best done with somebody on the outside. And that could be a teacher, it could be an Aikido sensei, it could be a therapist, it could be your parents or friends or somebody who has more experience than you. It could be a facilitator or a counselor. It doesn't really matter. But somebody on the outside can look at us and see us evolving and developing in ways, or maybe even backsliding in ways, that it's not easy to do by ourselves. Another thing about self-assessment is that we have to understand that it's very easy to assess the earlier stages that we've been through, because we've kind of differentiated, we've disidentified from those stages. Like right now, my daughter is 2 years old, and she's a toddler, but she's still a baby. But everywhere she goes around and sees babies, which is, at the park, she's saying, baby, 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 all the time. I've seen her different, she's not a baby, in her mind, she's not a baby anymore. And she sees babies and she's identifying them all the time, even when it's another child that's close to her age, because she's differentiated from that. She's actually sees that, oh, those are babies, I'm a big girl, I'm not a baby anymore. So the stage if we've evolved to a certain stage, we can assess the stages below. But it's difficult to assess our own stage because we're still identified as it. So again, we need that external reference point. And now how can we tell if it's an honest assessment? Well, that's kind of goes back to the same thing with that external reference point, because we can fool ourselves quite a lot about where we are and how developed we are or how developed we aren't. So again, that external reference point is very important in terms of self-assessment. About the evolution response, what's really nice about it is that it is divided into, it's not just these waves of development, but we have the core intelligences and we have the core values at each stage. So, what you can do is you can think of some conflicts that may be arising in your life or interpersonally or in certain situations with this person or that person, and you just kind of feel into your own experience during that time, excuse me, and just ask yourself, where are your values? Is it a live-die situation for you? Is it a win-lose situation? Like about being right or about being wrong? Is it about being responsible or about being irresponsible? Is it more about being authentic and being centered and grounded in your awareness versus being unconscious? Is it more about being inclusive in that moment of conflict or versus being exclusive? Or do you find yourself that you're oriented towards more and more integration no matter what, versus fragmentation where we push things away, where thank God that's over, I don't want it in my life. We negate it from our life. So in a way, checking in with the values and see, the higher values, we all say, yeah, that's great, I love that. But where the rubber meets the road is in a moment of truth in conflict. Where are your values? Because that's when our values will drop down to our center of gravity for sure. One more way to do self-assessment is a part of the evolution of response course, which I'll be talking about a little bit later, is that we have another chart which is the stages of development and their backslides and pitfalls. So these are the kind of the mistakes or dangers that can arise at each, danger is not really the right word, but the problems that can arise at each stage developmentally, kind of the shadow of each stage. And this chart kind of gives you a little bit of a reflection where you can see, oh, if I'm backsliding here, then these are the practices that I need to go forward. Or these situations, I'm actually not moving forward, but I'm moving back. So in this sense, if we're going to do self-assessment, we need to have a little bit of a reference, like a reference guide. But the best, of course, is working with somebody who has the experience already. Could be a teacher, therapist, parent, whatever. Or working with cohorts, working with people that are at your same stage, your same development, that they're in there working with you, and you kind of create this positive feedback system where everybody is reflecting to each other of the challenges, the difficulties, and even the wins while you're going through your practice. So another frequently asked questions that we have around the evolution response is, do we have to develop in order? It's such a beautiful kind of elegant system that's designed to unfold in these waves and blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be that way. In other words, you don't have to kind of ground yourself in awareness and intuitive response before you can start to work on creativity. Of course, you can start to work on creativity anytime, any place, anywhere, at any stage, at any age. Same thing with intuition, same thing with awareness. If you work on it in these kind of developmental waves, it just reinforces, the previous one reinforces the next stage. But it doesn't have to happen that way. In fact, there are some people that are more naturally connecting types of people. So their intuitive awareness is already more developed than their personal awareness. And there's other people that are just kind of creative, and that's who they are. And they're just, the creative capacity of what they do in life, really kind of, they're identified around that. So it doesn't necessarily have to unfold in waves like that. It can happen kind of, backwards, so to speak. This is just a simple model that shows how things unfold in waves, and if you practice it in these waves, it'll only strengthen wherever you're at, and it'll actually strengthen the capacity to move into the next stage with more fullness. So above all else, the evolution response is a path, and it's a path of practice. Aikido is a path of practice. The Do in Aikido means path. Now, whenever you see Do or the Tao or the Tao in any type of word or practice, it actually means that, as you probably know, the word Do or Tao means the way or the path. And so the question comes up, what kind of path is it? Well, it's not an ordinary path, just like the evolution response is not an ordinary path. If it's not an ordinary path, then what kind of path is it? It's a path of higher mental and physical discipline. As you move through the path, you're always going to, the limited relative parts of the self, parts of the ego, are always going to be challenged as you walk the path. The path, or the teacher, or the teachings will always challenge you to be somehow bigger, to be somehow fuller, to be somehow more complex, more compassionate, more caring in the world, more aware, more intuitive, more responsive in the world as you progress through the path. And that's how the path develops in you. So a path of practice is always a higher path of mental, physical, we could even say social, cultural, relational, organizational development. The evolution of response is the blueprint of that path. And that blueprint gives you very, very simple and clear-cut ways of how to move forward in the path of practice. And moving forward in the path of practice is nothing more than unlocking the code. This blueprint is coded inside of you. It's coded inside of me at the level of consciousness, and the blueprint the practice of the evolution response unlocks that code step by step, each stage of the practice. So you might be asking, what is the best way to practice the evolution of response? Well, if you've watched these two videos, you've actually come in touch with great ways to practice the evolution of response. In fact, it's the second best way to practice the evolution of response. If you take these practices and these teachings and these guides and you start to apply them to your own practice, you start to apply them to your own life, you'll actually begin to see benefit from just that. If you apply it a little bit, you'll get a little benefit. If you apply it more, you'll get more benefit. If you apply it fully, you'll get full benefit from just these 3 videos. But if you want to go deeper into the practice of the evolution response, we put together an 8-week course that will actually allow you to kind of start to go deeper in each one of the stages of evolutionary response and begin to apply it into your life. In this 8-week course, we'll be gathering each week via conference call, and you'll get to work directly with me as well as a community of global evolutionary response practitioners, where we go through the stages of the evolutionary response week by week with key practices and core practices that we're going to practice throughout the week. Each week, we'll be moving through the stages of the evolutionary response in 8 progressive modules. And each module is a specific teaching around the evolutionary response. We begin with module 1 called Aligning with Your Evolutionary Potential. And in that module, we'll be looking at what does evolutionary development mean, and what does it mean to actually come into alignment with the nature of evolution. Week 2 is the beginning of our second module, which is the level of survival reaction. We began to own our own fear, and we look into how fear is actually activated in our system. In week 3, module 3, we begin to look at the emotional reactions that can come up in the midst of stress and conflict, and especially looking at our own personal control dramas. Remember, we all have control drama types, and we're going to kind of discover those types and how to work with them and how to work with other control drama types. Module 4, we'll be looking at the choice maker and what it means to activate the power of intention. Module 5, we move into centered awareness response, creating a container for our experience. Module 6, intuitive response, connecting with others through awareness. Module 7, we'll be looking at creative response, which is an awake, an aware, and a connected system, and creating that system's intelligence. And Module 8, we'll be looking at what it means to be a fully integrated and freely functioning human being. These are the modules for the 8-week online Evolution of Response course. Remember, we're meeting 8 weeks, and it's a great way over a 2-month period to bring the teachings and the practice of the Evolution of Response into your own life and have it impact your own practice and your own development. And we're not just meeting for 8 weeks. In addition to the 8-week meetings, there's also going to be additional question and answer calls that I'm going to be offering, free coaching calls, there's going to be a course book and recordings and lots of great bonus material. If you're interested in it, please check out the registration page. You're going to be getting a mail in a few days that's going to tell you everything about it. And we just put together an offer that's like, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't know when I'm going to be teaching this course again. And this could be, it's the perfect opportunity if you could join us. So keep your eyes open for your mailbox. You'll be getting a link to the registration page soon. You can check out what we have to offer for the Evolution Response. Finally, I would love to hear your comments. There's a comment box below this video, just like the previous videos. If you have any questions, feedback, comments, objections, just put it all down there. I'll be sure to read all of them, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions or to comment as many as I can. So that's it for this 3-part video series on the evolution response, from vertical learning to the developmental zone to unlocking the code. I hope that you got some benefit out of these videos, and I hope that you can actually apply these practices to your life. And I wish you all the best on the evolution response. Thank you for joining me.